welcome you all, members of the press, to the closing press briefing of the Africa Development Week, which, as you know, has been very, very fruitful. We've had several deliberations on so many issues. We've had several activities, so many side events, the launch of leading publications, and we have spoken to the theme of the conference. You've just heard both co-hosts of the conference give their statements from the podium up. So we will not ask them anymore to make another statement. You were here. So what we'll do is go straight to the question. And if you don't mind, you'll have to introduce yourself and the media and then direct your question to any of the panelists. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Lee Muiti, Mail and Guardian Africa. My question goes directly to Dr. Lopez. We have had these days of deliberation, and we've been trying to harmonize Agenda 2063 and the UN's development goals. But what would we say exactly has been achieved at this meeting? What would be the final take-home message?
My name is Emmanuel Igunza from BBC News. Some of the sideline events at the meeting were on corruption, and they dealt on some of the issues affecting the continent in terms of illicit flow. And I just want a reaction from either the chairperson or Dr. Carlos on the Panama Papers, which tie into some of the issues that you discussed.
Thank you.
Okay,
there is a third hand here,
yes.
And then the fourth.
The Voice of Germany, Deutsche Welle. I would like to know from Executive Secretary Carlos Lopez what has come up at this conference with regard to migration which affects our continent.
Addis Ababa, Anadolu News Agency. Dr. Lopez, I never heard the theme of integration hit out at before. But at the launch of 2016 development report, I heard one panelist said, you can't integrate wretchedness. Has Africa not come of age to integrate? I want you to put a defense on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. I think on the takeaways of the conference, they were very explicit in the numbering that was presented by the chairperson. And I would like you to focus, like me, on a particular one, which is the mindset change that is needed for us to be able to achieve structural transformation. Because it is through that we are going to be able to capture many of the aspects that have been discussed during the week. The fact that we need a new narrative has become now obvious. But more important than the new narrative is how we ground that new narrative with empirical evidence, with good statistics, with very clear policies, and also with an engagement and negotiation that is really going to do justice to transformation. On the issue of migration, I think the basic message coming from that side event, and is also captured in the discussions about how we should deal with migration in light of the two agendas, 2063 and 2030, is the need for us to look into migration comprehensively. And in so doing, we are going to see that the benefits of migration are actually underestimated, and the problems associated with migration are being emphasized. Let me just make one very clear comparator vivid for you, which is the fact that Africa has over 1 billion people, and the totality of Africans migrating to Europe is about 2 million. That is equivalent to 0.2% mobility. And Africans migrating just to the DRC is above that number. So this is just to put a comparator vivid that, sometimes there is a bit of an exaggeration in the way we are looking into the flows. And then because we are so fixed on the flows, we don't look into the economic benefits and other aspects associated with it. So I think the call was, let's be comprehensive about the look that we need for migration. And there is a resolution that is coming out of our proceedings that basically calls for more research to be done and for that comprehensiveness to be topical in the coming year. As you know, the coming year is going to be particularly important because the theme for the African Union is going to be the demographic dividend. So this is very much related. On the integration, there was the launch of the Regional Integration Index. And if we do justice to what the findings of the index are telling us, we see a lot of progress. What we see also is uneven progress. So it's not progress all round. There are parts where we are doing better, and there are RECs, regional economic communities, that are doing better. But I don't think it is fair to say that we have not witnessed integration. In fact, over the last year, it has been a tremendous advance because we have the tripartite arrangement between COMESA, SADC, and the East African Community, and the launching of the Continental Free Trade Area negotiations. So this, on the trade aspect, are extremely important. But integration is not just about trade. That's the gist of the message on the Regional Integration Index. It's about human mobility, it's about financial flows, it's about common infrastructure, it's about common educational systems to allow for, again, moving of talent. It is about us looking into integration from the perspective of a new market that will be open to allow industrialization to take place and take root. I'm going to leave the corruption and the Panama Papers to the chairperson, not because I don't like Panama, but because I think she will be competent to respond. Thank you.
We are inviting the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Her Excellency Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, to address the questions that were directed to her.
Well, I think on the issue of corruption, for instance, and illicit flows, you know that a couple of years ago, we've been dealing with this matter led by one of our former presidents to look at the illicit flows from the continent, out of the continent. But I think for me, what is important now, because it's not a new issue, even when we first met with the EU in 2000, Africa-EU in Egypt, this was a matter that was discussed. But what is interesting is, why aren't you talking to the people who are holding the illicit flows to repatriate them back to our continent? Because everybody talks about corruption, but when we say, let those corrupt resources that were brought into your countries illegally from our continent, let them be sent back to our continent, we don't see movement there. And I think that's where now the debate must be taken. Because we need money for health care, for children's care, maternal care, for many social issues. Why can't we discuss as a continent, and as you, as the media, say to those people, because one of the excuses they put is, we don't know how they are going to be used. We can tell them how they are going to be used, but the important thing is that they must come back. Because if people know that if they send these funds illegally out of the countries and they'll be repatriated and we will know who has sent those funds out, then it's also an incentive for them to stop. But also, I think it's important to also look at the continent and how, of course, if there's corruption within government, that must be dealt with, because corruption within government erodes the trust between government and the citizens. It robs the citizens of the resources that are needed to deliver services for them. So that needs to be dealt with straight and in a straightforward manner. But there is also corruption around big corporates. And of course, you guys don't call it corruption, you call it blue-collar crime, you call it all sorts of fancy names, but it's corruption. And I think we should deal with corruption in its totality. Thank you.
Maybe we'll take a last round of. Yes, Omar, introduce yourself, your media, and focus on the theme of the ministerial, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Omar Radi from Spanish News Agency. My question is for both Dr. Zuma and Dr. Carlos Lopez. In terms of free movement of people across Africa, Africans moving into other African countries, essentially with visa on arrival, there are only about a handful of countries that allowed this so far. What strategies should be used to encourage more countries to adopt the current initiative Ghana has taken, for example? And my question to Mr. Luambo, your country, Mr. Minister, is one of the most affected with illicit financial outflows, and with the resources it has. In light of that, what's your perspective on the Panama Papers, and what do you want the African Union, how do you want the African Union to help you address such issues? Thank you.
Any other question before we? Yeah, please.
Follow-up for Her Excellency. A lot of the things we discussed here in the last few days will require resources, and we've seen data presented here about how much of AU programs are funded externally. So going forward, how can we ensure the AU is able to sustain itself?
I think we are done with the question. Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll take the first question on the free movement of people. It's a matter that we've been discussing because it's very crucial for integration. And at the last summit in January, there was a decision taken that all African countries must give a 30-day visa on arrival to for all African passport holders. And Ghana was actually responding to that decision. So countries said that they are going back to look at the practicalities of doing that, looking at their immigration regulations, looking at all that. But there is a decision, and it's up to all of us to hold our countries to that decision, so that indeed Africans can move freely amongst the African countries. Ghana, Rwanda, Seychelles, I think to some extent Mauritius, and we need more countries to come into that category. Because a lot of countries have that arrangement within their regions. In ECOWAS, we have that. Even in East Africa, a lot of countries have that. Within SADC, a lot of countries have that arrangement within the region. But now we need to move beyond that to interregional, so that people move freely, not only in their region, but beyond their region. The other decision that was taken was that we should begin to to utilize an African passport. And the first issues of that passport to the heads of state will be in Kigali in July. They will receive the African passport because we want to popularize the African passport because it's very symbolic as well as practical. Because if you are carrying an African passport, then you shouldn't be expected to apply for a visa. A few of us at the AU are already using that African passport within Africa, and it's very useful. But we want the heads of state to carry it when they are visiting African countries to popularize it, and other categories of African leaders. Thank you.
Before we ask Mr. Lopez to conclude, we want the Minister, His Excellency Josh Wemby, Chair of the Ministerial, to address the issue that was asked by the journalist, please.
Il y a un autre ami, je n'ai pas noté les noms, qui parle que la RDC est peut-être la plaque tournante de flux illicites. Je ne pense pas qu'il a la bonne information. Parce que, vous savez, pour qu'on parle de flux illicites, on part d'abord des données statistiques qui sont répertoriées au niveau du système bancaire. Et que je sache, la loi bancaire au Congo oblige à ce que toutes les banques fassent leur déclaration de dépôt et de mouvement de fonds dans ce que nous appelons la centrale des risques et des renseignements. Donc, l'accroissement des dépôts dans une banque fait toujours l'objet d'un examen au niveau de la Banque centrale. Et que je sache, moi-même, j'étais directeur de la Banque centrale et ce service était sous ma supervision. Pour parler des flux illicites, il s'agit du blanchiment des capitaux, vous voulez parler. Au Congo, il y a la cellule de lutte contre le blanchiment des capitaux. Et cette cellule fait partie de l'organisation des cellules qui luttent contre le blanchiment des capitaux. Mais si quelqu'un, vous savez, la dimension de la République démocratique du Congo, si quelqu'un vient avec des fonds dans les malles et entre par des voies frauduleuses, eh bien, il faut être Dieu pour savoir que les fonds sont entrés dans ce coin. Mais par contre, l'administration fait en sorte que ces fonds-là ne puissent pas être blanchis. Pour que ces fonds puissent être blanchis, il faut que ces fonds intègrent le système bancaire. Et vous pouvez me croire que l'accroissement, comme je venais de le dire, d'un peu de dépôt d'une banque doit faire l'objet d'une explication. Donc, je ne pense pas que vous avez la bonne information. Il y a eu, je le sais qu'à un moment donné, on a parlé de Libanais qui blanchiraient des capitaux. Mais avec l'aide des autres banques centrales, nous avons essayé de faire en sorte de vérifier la véracité de ces propos. Et à ce jour, vous ne me donnerez pas un seul rapport, que ce soit du Fonds monétaire, que ce soit de la Banque mondiale, que ce soit de la Banque africaine, qui établit qu'il y a eu blanchiment des capitaux. Donc, il faut revoir vos sources d'information. Je ne pense pas que ce que vous avez affirmé est vrai. Dans tous les cas, on est ouvert. Si vous avez des informations, vous avez des données probantes, eh bien, on est prêt à les examiner pour améliorer tant soit peu notre système. Je vous remercie.
Mr. Carlos Lopez, please.
Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, the only question left, which was migration mobility, has already been answered by the chairperson. Let me just add one economic aspect, which is also implicit. We know that the free circulation of people is always the most difficult part of any integration project. Normally you have free circulation of capital is the first, and then free circulation of goods. And then, we get a bit stuck on the free circulation of people. as the last step in the process. But in fact, Africa has a lot to gain to reverse this and to actually have the free circulation of the three at the same time. This trend is basically something that should be addressed as part of the negotiations taking place right now on the regional integration agenda. So decisions have been taken in the last summit of the African Union. So it's a matter now of also helping the countries with the technical work to make it happen. And we are very pleased that Ghana has followed suit to the decision and joined 3 other countries that already have it. Thank you.
The chairperson of the African Union Commission will give some complementary
So
information.
there was a question that we didn't answer.
Yes, I asked about the sustainability.
On the sustainability, yes. As you know, the question of financing both the Agenda 2063 and the AU has been discussed quite extensively. It will continue being discussed, but the heads of state last year agreed in terms of the AU Commission that they would like to move within the next 5 years to funding 100% of the operational cost, 75% of the programs, and 25% of peace and security. And so this is going to be incremental over 5 years. But over and above, there is going to be a retreat, probably the first of its kind for heads of state, to go on a retreat together with ministers of finance to discuss this very question of financing Agenda 2063 and the Union. And of course, I'm sure Carlos will also add on this, because there are discussions about various sources of funding, leaving aside aid, because we know that there isn't a country that has been developed or continent that has been developed to become prosperous, integrated, and peaceful through aid. So we have to look at other ways. There's a discussion about domestic resource mobilization, about alternate sources of funding besides the taxes and what you get in the fiscus. So, and also looking at investing some of our sovereign wealth, private wealth, pension funds, investing them in projects on the African continent, looking at assisting countries to expand the tax base and to have efficient tax collection. So there are a number of issues, equity funds, but we are also happy that we see also investments, FDIs coming from outside. But we are happy because increasingly we see intra-African investments as well that are on the rise. So I think we will be able to fund using the whole range of financial instruments. But if you also just look at the infrastructure projects that are taking place across the continent, more than 60% of the funds come from member states, not from outside. So already that is happening, but of course we need more. And of course, we hope that all those who are also, as I said, investing their funds outside can bring them back to the continent. But I'll ask Carlos. He's more informed on these issues than me. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I can add much more. Maybe just to give people a sense of the size. The 60 richest Africans have about 400 billion, or the accumulated equity in African stock exchanges is 1.3 trillion. So that gives an idea that there is a lot of money in Africa. So let's try to tap into it.
With that, I think we've come to what has been dubbed the African Development Week 2016. We want to thank Your Excellencies here for addressing the media people, and we want to thank you colleagues for coming for this press conference, hoping to meet you anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you.